General H.R. McMaster. General McMaster was the former national security advisor. He has a distinguished 30 plus year military career. He's been well known as an expert in space. He's written recently a book, which I would urge you to all take a look at. If we can give us that slide, please. Yes, called Battlegrounds, about the fight to keep the world free. And it's a very, very interesting book. And I just want to quote him: the need for collaboration on crucial challenges to national security is growing because technology-based innovation is shifting away from governments and towards the private sector. And we're delighted to have him with us today. And we're delighted to have him as part of the Edgybees Advisory Board. General, nice to see you.
Hey, thanks, John. Thanks, Adam. It's really a pleasure to be with everybody. You know, the U.S. space strategy that was published in 2018 was grounded in the realities, that space capabilities are vital to security and prosperity on Earth, that space is a contested domain, and that the promotion of peace and prosperity through assured access to space requires dynamic and cooperative interplay between the national security, commercial, and civil space sectors. So I was excited to join the team at Edgybees to help foster that interplay. And as we've been talking about, the exponential growth in space-generated data is already contributing to security, economic development, and a range of efforts from the reduction of carbon emissions to natural disaster response. But to take full advantage of growing space capabilities requires accurate, authoritative, and transferable data. And that's why I'm enthusiastic about Edgybees' geolocation capability applied to space-based surveillance and collection platforms. And Edgybees, I think, could help standardize data in a way that makes big data analysis and the application of artificial intelligence technologies more effective in overcoming some of the most critical challenges we're facing, including the need for early warning of hostile actions by enemies and adversaries who possess long-range missile and rocket capabilities. I mean, just think, obviously, this applies to North Korea and Iran, but it also applies to Houthi rebels in Yemen, or Hezbollah in southern Lebanon, or Hamas in Gaza. The need to understand better sources of carbon emissions that are accelerating global warming so that we can prioritize actions to save the planet for future generations. The need to provide warning of and track the development of natural disasters, from tsunamis to hurricanes and tornadoes to droughts and wildfires. The need to track, respond to, and provide relief to humanitarian catastrophes, such as the ongoing catastrophe in Afghanistan today.
So
the need go ahead, John.
Yeah. Do you think that governments today understand sufficiently how important space is going forward? Is there enough attention, enough budgets, enough focus, at national levels in different countries about the importance of space, or is it still being discovered?
No, I think there's 100% realization of how important it is. And I would just refer anybody to the space strategy of 2018. I think that was a real wake up for the United States. We questioned the assumptions on which previous strategies have been based. I mean, really the hopeful assumption that space would be a benign environment, right? Well, we know it's contested, and we know that going back to China's ASAT test in 2007, right? And many developments, especially by the Chinese and the Russians since then. But we've become more and more dependent on assured access to space for, obviously, communications and financial transactions. And what we're beginning to see now, with really the orders of magnitude growth in commercial space-based platforms, is that governments have to switch. They have to switch from an over-reliance on big, few, expensive platforms to access the tremendous commercial assets that are out there, right? And to make them relevant to national security. And this is why I'm excited about it. I think, that what you need is data that's transferable. It can't be overly classified, right? If you're responding to a natural disaster, if you're working with indigenous forces or forces that are resisting forms of aggression, you can't bring them top secret data, right? You've got to be able to give them access to accurate data. And that's why I think, the geolocation capability, the ability to geotag this imagery to make it more useful in all those applications I mentioned, and many more, is important. It's also important that that Edgybees technology is GPS independent as well. And
right, that ability to be GPS independent is really remarkable. I understand there's a lot of work on quantum sensors and whatnot to make things, sort of when GPS is not available. Because as you said, we assume that it's always going to be there, but if space is contested and there's a possibility that these things are knocked out, then what do you do?
Right, exactly, and then also to have that ability to share it with whoever needs it, whoever needs that information. I personally believe that a higher degree of transparency enhances security for everybody, right? And I think that transparency is increasing every day, but not with the level of accuracy that can fulfill the needs I mentioned.
And do you think that the West, with its entrepreneurial sort of surge of venture capital and entrepreneurs like Roz and Adam coming into the fray, are going to continue to lead in space, or are they going to be overpowered by other countries that are less transparent, more centralized, and more government oriented?
Well, John, we have to, right? We have to make sure that they win in this competition, and this is why I think it's so important to mobilize capital and to support our greatest innovators in this space. The Chinese model of centralization, picking winners, and subsidizing these winners with vast amounts of money, that has certain advantages. But I think our advantage lies in our unbridled entrepreneurialism. And our free and open system. So I think that, but what we really need to do is, we shouldn't be investing in Chinese companies or in SenseTime or in Chinese AI companies or Hikvision. I think that move is in a correct direction. And I think what we need these days, John, is like a Hippocratic oath, for investments within these authoritarian countries. Don't do any hurt or harm in three ways, right? Don't help them gain a differential advantage over us militarily or in the emerging data-driven global economy. Second, I think don't help them perfect their technologically enabled Orwellian police state, right? And third, I would say, don't sacrifice, the short-term or the long-term viability of our companies in exchange for short-term profits with the sort of joint ventures and so forth that China offers to gain access to its market in the near term, and then of course shuts you down and steals your intellectual property, and then dumps their products on the international market to drive down your market share internationally. So anyway, I think investing in companies like Edgybees that are in the free world, and there are plenty of opportunities to do it, and mobilizing capital in a way that obviously gets a great return, but also contributes to international security, I think is a kind of a righteous thing to do.
And then one last question, General. How important is regulation going? I know that you're a free market supporter, and probably I would guess, by the little I know about your politics and sort of worldview, you're not a great fan of regulation. But isn't it going to be critical for space in order to make sure that we don't have problems of space junk or conflict? I mean, how do we balance this transparency in the free market economy with regulation and in fact with cooperation around the world, making sure that all countries are working together for the benefit of humanity?
Well, I mean, international cooperation is, as we know, vitally important in space, and it's actually a very key dimension of security, right? If we're building platforms that multiple countries rely on, that is of itself a good deterrent for against aggressive action, by for example China or Russia. I also think that there does need to be a standardization or regulation to take full advantage of space platforms, and again, such that the data is authoritative and is transferable. And I think that a capability like Edgybees can do that. Especially if it gains wide acceptance commercially without regulation, it will become a de facto way to get others to sign on and to increase the kind of transparency, the kind of early warning of events, and that is so essential to all those key needs that I mentioned.
Thank you so much, General, for being with us tonight, and look forward to seeing you again on further webinars with the OurCrowd community. Thank you very much.
Thanks, John. Take care. See you guys.
Okay.